Well, hello. It's Rohan from National Update today, coming to you live. I know at the moment this is only a small channel, but this is an endeavour to really address a lot of the major issues that are developing in the United States in this critical and turbulent time, I suppose you'd describe it. It's currently 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. So that makes it about 9:30 p.m. in New York, and then there's Mountain Time. And in Europe, I'm not quite sure what the time would be, but this is now live. I'm aiming to try and find the best times that people are on to talk about different key issues and developing events, etc. Today, I'm looking at the New York Appeals Court voiding of Donald Trump's $527 million penalty. An appeal court with 5 judges in New York ruled that, in actual fact, the fraud had been established. But on the basis, interestingly, which is very rare, they invoked the Eighth Amendment to say that the penalty was excessive. And so they reduced what had, with interest, amounted to $527 million. They reduced that to 0. There is a degree of complexity about this because we're dealing in a civil area. This is not criminal. Apparently, there was a decision made by Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, to pursue a civil case rather than pursuing a criminal one. Now, that doesn't mean that it wasn't possible. It's just that the burden of proof and the standards are far higher for criminal. You have to actually show an intent and sustained intent, etc., which makes it very hard to achieve a sufficient momentum, as it were, to get a conviction if you're going to go down that path. And so it seems to me, from what I can glean from the different comments, that there was actually a decision strategically to pursue a civil case. So what happened? Between the years 2014 to 2021, there was ranging between about $815 million to $2.2 billion per annum. That's a 7-year period of inflation of the values of various Trump properties and things like that, the valuation, to gain significantly better insurance rates and also to get better rates with banks on things like loans, etc. This had, I believe, the correct term, and I'm not 100% certain of this because trying to gain the detailed information on this has proven a challenge in some areas, so I can't actually give the total specific details of the case, which I would love to do, and I am pursuing that, by the way. But there's something like forensic accounting that went on, and it showed highly detailed overinflation of a number of Trump properties. And it's really not that hard if you've got the documentation that's supplied from banks and insurance companies as to what was claimed, and then later on comparing that to realistic evaluations based on internal paperwork. I believe, this is my understanding, I believe, of the Trump organizations that were involved. So basically, the idea is that you inflate the price and value of certain assets, whether that's properties and things like that. And I'll go into a bit more detail. I've got some actual specifics, which I was able to find. And you overinflate those to get a better lending rate because you're using some of these things as collateral, or it's factored into, like insurance details. Maybe you reduce the value of some things, or maybe, it depended on what you were trying to do. So the appellate court ruled based on the Eighth Amendment, which is usually things about bail bonds and things like that, bonds or getting out, it's about unfairness, like cruel and unusual punishment comes under the Eighth Amendment. Often it's about that the bond hearings, that they're requiring too much cash for somebody to get out of prison because they can't afford it. And this is actually something that's interesting too, that currently Donald Trump is aiming to take that away across the board for many, many, many people and deny them any ability to put up a bond to be released so that they're then held. That's a side issue. But the angle here is that the Eighth Amendment usually deals with that. And then also it's about penalties that are considered to be excessive. And in this case, the 5-judge court ruled under the Eighth Amendment that the $512 million was excessive. I'd be really interested to know what that rationale was, because if you look at, there's a variety of similar cases that are out there. Of course, you sometimes have to look outside of New York for this, and this is a New York case, so it's New York law and its precedents and whatever. But this still establishes a precedent that if you're a billionaire and you are overinflating assets, etc., for things like insurance and banking, by up to $2.2 billion for 7 years, ranging up to, that you can be found to have actually, yes, inflated and the frauds were confirmed, and yet you have no penalty for it. And an interesting side piece to this is Adam Schiff, the senator for California, has been accused by Donald Trump and the Trump administration of mortgage fraud. I've actually got a video on this, so if you come through the channel, I go through in detail about this. Basically, Fannie Mae never used the term fraud, and they called it something benign, which is that there were potential misrepresentations. And if you really look at it, there were 2 properties, and really the only thing was that they were both being used as primaries, but the one that was in California only attracted per annum around about a $70 tax break. That's it. Now, for that, the DOJ and the Trump administration are screaming that it's ripping off Americans, is what Trump characterized it as, and it's almost like the crime of the century. And if you watch the right-wing media and things like that, I don't put myself as being left or anything. I'm somebody that's trying to look at the facts. Now, I know that is something that is not what MAGA does. So I'm not going to sit there and parrot things that are untrue. I'm about the truth and finding the facts as well as you can. And of course, things are much more complex. But in this case, if you look at what's happening, if you're looking at what is justice, and I'm trying to show a measure of justice here, $2.2 billion ranging up to over 7 years, $70 a year over however long it was, and you're talking an astronomically, majorly different gain, like the amount of gains are apparently considerable that the Trump family was able to gain from this, because, of course, his sons, I believe, were involved in this, certainly Don Jr. So, in the Schiff case, they're claiming that this is criminal. So they are trying to pursue him for a $70 a year paperwork error and claiming that he should resign. There's actually members of the House, and I'm going to dig into that because there's one particular lady there who is around my sort of vintage, that is ex-military, that you would have thought had some kind of honor and some kind of adherence to the truth and protocols, etc., that were calling for Adam Schiff to resign over what is really, I think, a manufactured scandal. And then Letitia James, same sort of mortgage fraud thing, 2 properties and the same kind of claim. And it seems to be that what I'm seeing is a pattern that the current Trump administration seem to be following, which is identify an enemy, twist whatever it is, whether it's some sort of bureaucratic situation or something minor, but twist it into the language of something like it's a major crime, like Tulsi Gabbard is doing, accusing Barack Obama of treason. And if anybody looks at that case, and I've covered that, and I'm going to go into that in greater detail. If anybody looked at the documents that they issued, which was basically a PDF, so you couldn't just take you couldn't take the text out and run it through and check it. You had to actually OCR each page, which is optical character recognition. But if you look at the details, in that case, there was very clear, well-established and understood concepts that everybody agreed on both sides of the political fence, and the media. Everybody together had a full agreement. And yet Tulsi Gabbard's now claiming that there's all these magical things that people like Brennan and Comey and James Clapper are supposed to have done, which, in my view, this is, the MAGA people accused Letitia James of a witch hunt. And let me just put this straight. If it was a witch hunt and it was based on something frivolous or it was erroneous or whatever, I would be screaming as loudly as the MAGA people saying, no, this is a travesty, that's wrong. Okay? And if, on the same token, if there was a Democrat that clearly broke the law and clearly was in contravention of whatever, hypothetically could be anything. I mean, let's say if Obama had committed treason and had orchestrated some kind of a coup, because this is what Tulsi Gabbard was accusing Obama of, that would be outrageous. And if that had happened, yeah, let the court run. But the problem I have here is that there seems to be a pattern here of the Department of Justice, etc., taking completely partisan lines. Now, people could argue that maybe under Merrick Garland that, well, because he was a Democrat, that they were then biased. And look, Donald Trump was convicted on 34 counts of felony for fraud. But here's the thing. There was no pressure put on the courts. There were investigations and yes, if there is definite evidence of something, there should be investigations. Absolutely. But when you're basing it on something and claiming that there is something there that isn't, I think that it's not only morally bankrupt, I actually think it sets a terrible precedent that you just make wild accusations based on nothing. If it was true, yes, certainly address it like that. So I'm trying to get this as a justice. This is the main story here, and I'm kind of feeding people into it. This is, do we believe in a system of justice where it doesn't matter who is in power, the law should apply equally to everybody. And if anybody conducted witch hunts, that's a bad thing in my view. It doesn't matter which color of the political fence. It's not great. But anyway, let's come back to this case. But before I do that, I just want to say, so the accusations against Obama, against Letitia James, against Adam Schiff. Letitia James, by the way, is the New York Attorney General. Sorry, I should have said that. And for those that don't know, Barack Obama is an ex-president. I'm sure everybody knows, but hey, somebody might not. I'm sure there are some people in different countries. Hi, welcome to the show. By the way, give me feedback. If people want more coverage of different things from wherever they're based, I'm happy to accommodate that to the best of my ability. Anyway, my position here, though, is it looks to me like the current Department of Justice is not only completely biased and partisan, they're not even adhering to the basic concepts of the law. They're trumping up things that aren't real. They're skewing things that are just ordinary and not the crime of the century. And yet we have the current president who, in these cases, the documentary evidence is clear and detailed, and multiple people that testified and the documents that they presented, etc., in this particular New York case about fraud. It's chapter and verse. It's forensic. It's highly detailed. People testified. Documents were summoned. Now, if people are going to say, oh, the deep state did all these weird and wonderful things to corrupt all these things, there's so many moving parts here. And there were, there's private individuals involved that had to present records. So you're going to tell me what? All the insurance companies, all the banks, all the legal people that were involved, they were all corrupt, and this was all designed to perpetrate some kind of a witch hunt on Donald Trump. Hey, if that was true, and, I'm going to countenance this because some people really believe this, but when you look at this, please just go through. This is the thing. In my view, don't trust anybody about anything, because in this day and age, anything can be fabricated, twisted, whatever. I could be a deep fake for all you know, saying anything because the Chinese could get my face. Oh, I'm not actually, because, there you go. I'm real. But I would suggest to anybody, sure, there's the hardcore mega people. I'm not talking to you because you guys, you've got your viewpoint. You're going to stick to your guns, and night is day, black is white, whatever you want to believe. Facts don't matter to you guys. I get it. So you guys don't worry about it. Just ignore me. To those that are interested in justice, in people being treated equally under the law, this is of great concern because Donald Trump gets off scot-free, zero, nothing, for ranging from $815 to $2.2 billion over a 7-year period between 2014 and 2021. That is not insignificant. That is a huge amount of fraud, and he gets nothing. There's no criminal angle to this because they thought it was too hard to prove, and because, now that Trump is the sitting president, the general way that they deal with this is that you don't prosecute sitting presidents. Some people argue that that's not a great idea. Some people think it's a great idea. And some people are in the middle. In this case, invoking the 8th Amendment of all things, like I said, it's things like bond or bail kind of hearings, people to get out on whatever they're charged with, and if it's priced too high, that they can actually get legal redress for that. That's one of the key things it does. Then things like cruel and unusual punishment, that's what it covers. And then excessive fines. Well, okay, here's one point. If this was an excessive fine in their eyes for up to 2.2 billion over 7 years, really? That's excessive? Okay, maybe you argue it is. Well, not even half that or a quarter of that, but nothing. I mean, anybody else, if they were charged, not charged because this is civil, but if a case was brought against any other company in the United States, and they even did like $1 billion worth of fraud, then they should get nothing because that's lower. You see what I'm saying? There's a precedent that's being established here. This sets a benchmark. This is a case that can be argued in multiple different law courts, and this appeal court of 5 people, even one of them, by the way, said that the case should have been dismissed. When you've got chapter and verse fraud in high detail, well then what's enough? If they're saying, if that particular judge is saying that's not, should be thrown out, why? What's your reasoning? I'm genuinely interested in what the dissenting view is. And at some stage I hope to get it. And, admittedly, I have read their reasoning, and maybe they've got a perfectly good reason, but just on the face value, it just seems unjust to me. And does that mean if you're a billionaire and you do $2.2 billion up to over 7 years, that's okay. You can do that. And all the courts should now, the benchmark is that that's okay. Do people think that's fair? I mean, does that mean you shoot somebody, and if we rule that, if Trump did it, and it was, that makes it okay, that's then the precedent kind of thing. You see what I'm saying? This is about justice. Maybe you think it's a witch hunt, but if you do, hey, you guys out there that aren't the hardcore magas that are totally can't look at anything, And, hey, tell me, if you can find evidence, if you can go through this forensic financial evidence and chapter and verse of the case, which I don't know whether that's totally available. I think there are some things that are confidential, which is why when I've been hunting, I haven't been able to find it yet. If there are any journalists out there that have it, please print it. I just want to see what the truth is. What were the actual arguments? What was the actual evidence? Well, let me go to that for a start. So let's talk about what happened. And says he, I got lots of paperwork on this, or not paperwork, lots of, research that I've done. But let's have a look at this. Let me go through this because this was looking at the detail. Eighth Amendment. No, that's not it. I'm trying to look at. Oh no, maybe it's the next one. I'm just looking at because of the property details. Oh, here we go. The fraud document. This is the fraud. Oops. I'm trying to destroy my mic here. So what happened? This is what I was able to piece together. So the forensic accounting revealed, and I believe it's forensic. I have not been able to totally confirm and totally fact check this to the degree I would normally be happy. So I'm saying, allegedly, to say I'm not absolutely 100% certain on this, but the current best information I've got calls it forensic accounting. I still need to dig into the source. Here's the thing. If I see a source and that's just it, I want to dig deeper to see where they got their information from. And if I can't verify that, I'm less likely to say categorically this is true. I will say, the New York Times states that this is true, by the way. So this is the way I work. I'm trying to be fair and trying to be objective about things. Okay. Even though I'm biased because I really don't like what Trump's doing. That's my bias. I don't like what he's doing because I think he's doing the wrong thing. Like, I'm totally going to go on a tangent here because I'm live. I mean, I am in LA and people being terrorized here by ICE. Okay. A lot of people saying, oh, there's lots of riots and terrible things happening. No, there really aren't. There was just a few city blocks and there were some idiots that set fire to some things at the peak of it. And that was in response though to masked men throwing flashbang grenades at 5-year-olds, going to schools, trying to, even elementary schools, like predators. And then these thugs, they're thugs. They rough people up. They've even grabbed citizens. I've seen the news reports. Citizens were grabbed in these situations, permanent residents and things like lawful people that haven't committed crimes. It's crazy. And everybody here in, well, not all California, but certainly, Riverside as well. And there's like people have got to realize Los Angeles has like in its surrounding area where the population is. If any of you have flown over it, you know what I'm talking about. I've seen a lot of cities in my time, but when I first flew over, and this is quite a few years ago, I flew over LA, it blew my mind. It is a huge city. There's 20 million people. Roughly in that area, in the surrounding area. I mean, if you look at the actual city jurisdiction, it's about 4 million, but immediately surrounding that. And for miles and miles and miles, like you can drive 50 miles. And okay, are there empty spots here and there? Yeah, because it's a big area. But we're talking freeways, driving long distances, the San Diego and the Sacramento and other areas too, and the San Francisco even further. So if you widen it to an even bigger gap, it goes well above 20 million. That's a big space. And I've just got to tell people, it is a really cohesive city. It is multicultural. Are there problems? Is there crime and whatever? Oh yeah. You go to even a city that's like a couple of million and there can be lots of crime. But I will tell you, living in Los Angeles, are you always wary because there's that many people, there's always going to be somebody that's either criminal or crazy or something. It's just the nature of the beast. If you've got 20 million people in an area, that's a lot of people. So there's a lot more that can go wrong. But I will tell you, in the city, most people, if you treat them fairly and reasonably, you get along. If you are polite, respectful, that's usually reflected back. Are there racial tensions? pulling out the R word. Yeah, of course. And some people have deep resentments, and respectfully, with some very good reason. Some very good reason in some cases, because there have been, in my view, when you look at it objectively, there have been systematic abuses and things like that. Okay. My position's pretty basic and straightforward, which is, should be one rule for everybody, should be a fair playing field for everybody. Everybody should get a fair and reasonable go. Where I grew up, that's kind of the ethos. And if you have diversity, like you got Greeks or Italians or things like that. But here it's, there's people from all over Asia. So, if you like Thai food, Vietnamese food, which I love. And then people forget, where is LA situated? It's very close to Mexico. And historically, guess why that is? Because the whole of what is currently California at one point was part of Mexico. So it's not unreasonable to think that ethnically you're going to have a lot of people from Mexico here and other so-called Latin countries, or from South America or Central America and places like that. It's a given. And guess what? If you're fair and reasonable people and you treat them with respect, most people are going to be good. There are going to be some people that view you and judge you, whichever group you're from, whether you're from Asia, whether you're Latin, whether you're from an African American background or whatever it is. Yeah, some people will, but a lot don't. A lot don't. My friends, the communities I'm in, doesn't matter. Everybody's treated with respect. So when these protests happened, they happened because the communities here pulled together. I'm outraged. I feel for everybody that's grabbed. I feel threatened. All the people I know that are in range of ICE and what it's doing, because it's like a gang. It's like they're lawless. And so this is what colors my view about the Trump, I call it a regime. I am convinced that the erosions to the Constitution are systematic. I believe there is a huge chess game going on, and what is at stake is what the War of Independence was all fought about, what the Constitution was based on, and how it evolved. So that's where I'm sitting. If you want to talk Democrats and Republicans, that's a hoary chestnut. But if we're talking about justice, we're talking about democracy, we're talking about the rule of law, that's where I'm coming from. I don't feel safe. People don't feel safe here. And that's about justice, because there is the Fifth Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, and even the First Amendment rights you're supposed to have. ICE contravenes all of those constantly. Masked men, no identification, motley uniforms, and basically thugs. And have you people, for God's sake, in America, there are these thugs dragging people, children, women, and just ordinary people. Like, who are they going for? Oh, the big criminals like the cartels? No. The evidence is quite clear cut. The majority of people they're grabbing, whether they're legitimate or not, they're grabbing them because they just whisk them away to these hellholes in Louisiana and wherever they want to put them. But they're grabbing what? Day laborers and Home Depot? Field hands? Gardeners? Street vendors? Oh, these are the great, terrible criminals. And meanwhile, the FBI, Kash Patel, is shredded and they're transferring, or not transferring, they have transferred most of the top end and a lot of FBI agents to immigration. What about counterterrorism? What about white collar crime? What about insurgency and things like that? I mean, this is my opinion, but if you're going to cut the budgets and the amount of people chasing these things, doesn't that kind of mean they're not as effective? Like if you replace all of the experienced people and you put somebody that's a MAGA loyalist into a key position, in the upper echelons, the top agents that run the FBI, for instance, doesn't that dilute its effectiveness? And where does this go? I mean, look at the One Big Beautiful Bill. They allocated $350 billion to ICE. So let me put this into perspective. This New York court case, I see within the lens of the whole justice system, or the federal justice system. It's a state justice, but even the state justice is kowtowing to Donald Trump, setting precedents. And then you look at the broader law and order that people were promised. $350 billion with the One Big Beautiful Bill, which, by the way, stripped sick people or people needing healthcare insurance that thought they were guaranteed it, stripped away $1.2 trillion from them. And gave, $4.5 trillion in tax cuts to the super rich so they could have more yachts, more mansions, more jets. And they allocated to Homeland Security, which houses ICE, so it doesn't all go to ICE, but $350 billion, taxpayers' money. And follow my argument on this, they channel that into a group of thugs, so you have to pay them, you have to equip them. You need you need areas where they operate out of. And then you have, and this is the killer, lots of for-profit ICE prisons to house, 57,000. I've seen figures ranging to probably 60,000 because ICE doesn't actually, even their infrastructure, they can't track everybody. And by the way, they're spending money on Palantir so they can surveil everybody. So, all this money's going out. But they've reduced the SNAP program. So 4 million people are now going to starve? People that are out there, parents that are working like 2, 3, 4 jobs just trying to keep a roof over their heads, feed their children, pay for whatever else is around, and then deal with health care if they can make that. I mean, you hear sometimes of these stories of these mothers that skip eating for days. How is that a good thing? They took away the food stamps. But lots of money for these masked men to come and terrorize communities. And here's the additional point, just to really make this clear cut. Here in Los Angeles, it is a powerhouse. California is the 4th largest. Let me say that again. The 4th largest economy, and get this, in the world. Do people not get that? If California was on its own, it would be the 4th largest economy in the world. Think about that. Think about all the countries. Think about that. And these ICE guys, they are destroying businesses. They are terrorizing communities, and they're ripping families apart. I'm totally committed to Los Angeles and to California as a great place. It's a multicultural place. People are good here. Most people in this city and the surrounding areas are fantastic people. And all of the stuff you see on TV or Hollywood or all the ridiculous stuff that Fox runs. I mean, if Fox was honest and showed the truth and was fair, I'd be saying that's great. But they're not. I've looked at what they're doing, what they're saying and what they're reporting, and with my own eyes, I'm seeing what the truth is. And you're trying to tell me that the image that's being run there of all these riots and all these rapists and murderers, what a load of rubbish. This place is, if anybody thinks the LAPD are snowflakes, you have no idea. The LAPD is a crack unit. I mean, I would not mess with LAPD. If they pull you over, it's yes, sir. You are very careful. They are professional officers, and if you deviate, like they think you're going to pull a gun or something here, because they have to be, because there's so many people. Most people are going to be reasonable and aren't going to be a problem. But they have to deal with the worst case scenario. And that's just a factor of urban sprawls, high density populations. And because of that, it does change the flavor of things. But when you scratch beneath the surface, like I fell over one day, which is, I never do, but there was some malformation in a concrete thing, and I fell over. Instantly, 3 people came over and asked if I was all right. Different races, different people, different ages, all decent, all were concerned. And I've seen that happen. But I experienced it myself, and I was thinking, oh my God, I damaged my shoulder. It took a few months to actually heal. And, it shocked me because I usually was indestructible. But this is what I'm experiencing, all right? What I'm experiencing personally, and in many different areas and with friends and just out and whatever, it doesn't jive with what I'm seeing on Fox. It's not right. And I know that area where the so-called riots happened, where the Waymos were on fire, which was, yeah. And don't think that most people here in LA thought, oh yeah, that's a good thing. I mean, some people obviously think, standing up to ICE is a good thing, which I totally agree with. But destroying property, and the other thing is some young hooligans. And I saw the right-wing guys that set these things up and were photographing or filming. They were filming these things and put it on their channel. I watched this, and they said, oh yeah, they had to hide because if anybody knew that they were the right-wing, propaganda guys that were going around to film and capture things for Fox and other things to then, 24/7 have these particular little isolated moments. There were some kids that threw some stones at the LAPD, which I think is a brave thing to do, because messing with the LAPD, they're like a crack unit. You do not mess with the LAPD, rule 1. And anybody that thinks that they're snowflakes or something like that, and like the LAPD needed to have the Marines brought in, which is another thing, bringing the military in for a civilian situation. Anyway, the whole thing was orchestrated, in my view, because the ICE people, the ICE thugs, as I would call them, I don't think they're acting like officers. They are acting like thugs, had brutalized some people, and people pushed back, and then all of this escalated. That was by design. But they were going and grabbing who? Gardeners. They were grabbing, they left the gardeners. They would drag them off and leave their lawnmower actually running and things like that. This damages business here. So it doesn't, if you're an old guard Republican classic kind of person, do you really think it's a good idea to be destroying the goose that let me say that again, the goose that lays the golden egg? What is it? 80 billion or something that LA provides into the pot, net positive, and a whole lot of red states. And I'm not having a go at red states per se. If they need help, great. So I'm not criticizing that, but it's a net move. Where does the prosperity from America come from? Look at the economics. Why would you sabotage your main number one engine in the whole country? It's insane. The tariffs have caused pandemonium, businesses that have gone down, people's jobs that are lost. Look at the last jobs figures. And by the way, the head who published the report was then fired because they didn't doctor the numbers. The numbers were the worst in decades. Is that not information enough to say this is not a good thing? So anybody that's about law and order, is about prosperity, is about business and commerce. ICE costs a fortune, as well as DHS, $350 billion into something that is counterproductive because it's damaging the economy. How does that make sense? I don't care what the hardcore MAGA people say. The people that were MAGAistic, that are on the fringes, I'm talking to you and I'm talking to everybody else. But these people on the fringes that are like beginning to have doubts, look at the videos and look at it as a person that is law-abiding and decent and going about their business, just like most of you, that are above board, that obey the law, work hard, contribute. How can it be just that these people jump on a gardener or, just ordinary people, and they come out of the blue in vans? If you saw this on the movies in the past, you would have gone, oh, and look at all the videos about the overreach of different law enforcement groups. There are so many YouTube channels that I know of that say, invoke the right to remain silent and all those sorts of things. Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, ICE should not be bashing down a window. There's no probable cause. They don't have a warrant for people. They don't even know who they're going for. But it's like on South Park. Did you see that thing where the Kristi Noem character said, if it's brown, it goes down? Oh, they got it. They captured it. Hey, and all those people, all the Latinos out there and, Latin people, anybody, seriously, I feel for you guys. I mean, my God, it's like a police state. You can be a citizen. You can be no crime or anything. And they can descend on you and grab you. What? Racial profiling. What the? How does anybody think this is okay? And, don't think, the rest of us don't feel it, because I do. I'm wondering, like, at some point, are they going to come for everybody I know and me? Because here I am on YouTube saying, I'm against this, but I'm doing, this is the reason why I'm doing this. America, for all its flaws, had, something that galvanized people together and it was united, like World War II and things like that. From that time onwards, there was times of unity, and in different countries too, that unity was shared. Like when 9/11 happened, and people all around the world, I think, love New Yorkers. I mean, they are the toughest people on earth, honestly, and they galvanized. Like when the two towers got hit, I was watching it. I was in a different country. And I tell you what, everybody that I knew, when we saw that, I watched it live. I just happened to have come back from a conference and I was up watching it. And I can tell you that a shiver ran through everybody's spine that I knew. And we were like, are we next? We felt it. It was visceral. And that's talking to somebody that was outside at the time. And now having been in the country for many years, many years, and you experience things directly, there was a cohesion. There used to be the civility. There used to be, even though there were debates and there was, there was a degree of, theater that goes on in politics, there was still a kind of an honor. Like, look at what happened with Nixon. It was the Republican senators that said, what you're doing is criminal. It's not a good thing. There was integrity right across the board. Okay, was there always corruption at times? Yeah. A country as big as the United States, all sorts of things are going to happen. Nothing's going to be perfect. But the core galvanizing feature was prosperity, that you would unite and come together. People would be treated fairly. You have the rule of law, like habeas corpus and things like that. Going to a criminal court, if you're charged with anything, that you have your day in court and you even get representation and whatever. What is happening now is tearing all this apart. And, for those hardcore MAGA people that are not seeing that and want to twist it whatever way they like, okay, that's your right. That's the way you want to think. But for everybody else, and particularly those that might have supported Trump at some point, are you not seeing this? When you see those videos, when these thugs are thumping up women and children and old men and hurting them, they're hurting these people. And then they throw them into these terrible prisons where they got 50 people stuck in a room with a hole in the floor for a toilet. and they're feeding them rubbish because they're for profit. See, here's the other thing. How much money is spent on these for-profit prisons that are supposed to be detention centres for people that aren't criminal? Most of the people that are in detention, rightly or wrongly, or whether they broke the Fifth or Fourth or even First Amendment, all of the people that are there, they're not criminals. How is that just? Try and break away from whatever mindset you might have had. Imagine that your mother, your sister, your brother, your father, your son, your daughter are being, like 5-year-olds, had flashbang grenades thrown at them by these thugs. How is this a good thing? It makes no sense. And now I'm going to swing this to what's going on. It makes perfect sense if your intention is to assault democracy. If your intention, invade DC, invade LA with troops. Chicago's next. When's it New York's turn? You know why he hasn't gone to New York. You know why? Well, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, perhaps because he has some emotional, connection to it. But I'll tell you one of the reasons why he hasn't gone to New York. Because those guys, they will not broker any complete nonsense. They will not broker it. I mean, if the two towers going down couldn't break them and they pulled together, can you imagine? Can you imagine trying to bully New York? Well, the most powerful state, on par with California, but where the roots of the strength of the United States, which echoes down history, you think you're going to go and bully them? Oh boy, I would not like to be a nice person going around New York. I mean, if they have too much, it's like here in LA, that feeling is like people are not liking this. And of course, by the way, people, I'm not advocating for violence or anything. Totally against it. And by the way, they want violence, I think. These guys want violence so they want to get photoshops where, photo opportunities or optics where they can say, oh, look at them rioting and doing all these evil things. These cities are running well. Do they have their problems? Yes. There's no need to come in. Like, can you believe Big Balls gets beaten up by a couple of people in a carjacking? Now, do I know DC enough to say, yeah, I've lived it, whatever? I've seen some people say, yeah, there's some real crime here and it's a problem. I accept that, and I hear you. We should all live freely, fairly, and be protected. Totally on board with that. On the flip side, the figures show it's like a 30-year low for crime there. And by the way, that figure is below a whole lot of red states where the crime is much higher. Not that I'm saying, oh, you, bad red states, but I'm saying, and you're trying to justify going here when there's bigger problems over there, but for political reasons you're not. I'm picking at that. I am sorry for the people in the red states that are not being protected and that are living in fear. Nobody should. This is my whole point. Nobody should live in fear. It was never that way in many countries. And yet what is at stake now is that very thing, is freedom itself. Because if the US goes down the path of Germany in the 1930s, and by the way, I have got a ton of material and I'm going to release it soon. I have researched this stuff in detail. I've looked at the parallels where you're going from democracies to dictatorships, looked at the common points and looked at the similarities with what is happening now. I will tell you, it is chilling. So where am I going with this? Okay. We got some real problems. I would say, everybody stand up, talk about this. You can't live in fear. In my view, it's the old adage. It's better to be on your feet than to be on your knees. And if you've got to stand up for what is right and justice, people are going to put their lives on the line for this, because there is a common decency that runs through the United States. There is a sense of decency. There is a sense of community. Even if there are differences, this is an artificial division of people being filled with nonsense. Build the bridges. That has to be reversed, because if it's not, the outcome, it's pretty obvious what happens in a civil war, all right? Barbara F. Walter, have a read of her. She did some work for the CIA and developed a model which looked at different countries, which they would analyze to see what the likelihood was for a country to go into civil war, and they built a whole model. So they found the common factors, and you can access this online. Go hunt it down, and look at Barbara F. Walter. She's a fantastic read, and she's a very clever woman. Homage. I kind of borrowed some of those ideas, and I built a kind of a Frankenstein's monster to evaluate what's going on. And I got to tell you, and I'll present my document. Okay, is it going to have flaws? Does it need refinement? Yeah, it's a living document, because all the stuff that's happening, there's lots to follow. But in her document about civil wars and that test, there are red lights flashing on just about every one of the key aspects of it. And that's scary, because those people that have read history, like me, I'm older and I've been around enough and looked at things enough, and I can remember different events and whatever. So you have that backdrop. So that's kind of the lens I look at, is more of a longer term picture. And if you looked at what happened, and I am going to show you guys chapter and verse, compare a whole lot of different events and situations and tie them into what's happening now, show where compare and contrast. It is chilling. It is chilling. We have to find a way. We have to build bridges. We have to find a way that doesn't end in the worst possible scenario, because all of the indicators that I'm seeing, nobody's going to win out of it. Well, maybe a few might. A tiny minority might win out of it. But it's bad for the whole damn world, as well as as well as America. This is just bad. I mean, the figures, just look at the reality. Look at what the tariffs did. Look at what the tectonic shift of pulling out of Europe did. It allows China and Europe, that are naturally trading partners, it opened the door for China to go in there and make connections. And yeah, I can talk a lot about from the Marshall period, the Marshall Plan to now. But it's like America alone, America first. Well, yeah, sounds good on paper, but look at what they're doing. You've alienated all the allies, bullied Canada, bullied Mexico, as if there aren't tensions enough. And look at the presidents that are there now, or, look at the people. I mean, I saw an ice hockey game. And when it was the American anthem that was playing, they booed. The Canadian, I'm going to take a drink. Oh boy. I know I'm going on lots of tangents here, but I'm trying to paint the picture. Most people get this deep down. Most people, even if you're trying to be blind, gets an idea things are not good. I'm going to be brutally honest. In all the histories that I've looked at, if this doesn't parallel Germany in the 1930s, particularly 1933 to 1934, and again, I'm going to go through and demonstrate this. I'm not going to give it away because I've done a lot of work on this. And I want to chapter and verse go through all the minutiae of what happened there, what's happening here in detail. and have it verified. And I'm going to go through, I'm going to show the whole chess game, and then I'm going to look at each of the main plays, and I'm going to drill down. I don't know why nobody's doing this. Why is CNN and MSNBC, which are doing a great job in some ways, like MSNBC, I was impressed with recently. They've been like Rachel Maddow. I mean, my God. And the rest of the team that's there that on the late night thing. But Rachel Maddow in particular, I have a lot of time for, and who is brutally honest about this and delivers in a way that's accessible to people. But here's the thing, though. I get the feeling that MSNBC is soft chewing a lot of things. They're doing better now. I've seen that since Gavin Newsom, my God. I tell you what, it's like a sigh of relief here. People are laughing at the trolling, loving it, and watching Fox not getting it. They don't understand irony and parody. I mean, they don't get it, which makes it all the sweeter. I don't know if people have been watching those videos, but it is a breath of fresh air, a much needed one, and time for mirth and a lot of fun. And in one of the political catch-up videos that I've been doing, I'm hoping to do a lot more of those. And it would be nice to hear from some people like experts or, different commentators. I would love to have, some chats about this. I've got a lot of ideas that I think are very different to what the mainstream media is talking about. Certainly Fox, my God, and Newsmax. Oh my God. It's like going into a different universe watching that. And I'm a facts guy. Am I always going to be totally right about everything? There's always going to be problems. Something's questioned, are there different sides and elements? Yeah, absolutely. But sometimes things are pretty clear cut. And ice thugs going and beating up old ladies, pregnant women, children, and throwing flashbang grenades. No. In my heart of hearts and my gut, it's instinctively wrong, because I grew up with the idea that you look after people in the community, and I actually personally intervene sometimes, to protect people. I don't want to go into too much detail, but there are millions of us, I think, that feel outrage at such brutality. Anyway, Gavin Newsom and the memes. My God, I love it. And I think the team that's there is genius. And look, these people, and I don't know how civility is something that people can even think about. This is really a cold civil war. I think that's what this is. Because if you look at the key indicators towards a dictatorship, everything's flashing red, guys. And it's some of it's in the critical ranges. I think we're more than halfway there. I haven't done my figures yet, but I think we're a lot further along than people realize. And even though the No Kings rallies demonstrated that there are a huge undercurrent of people that all feel the same way. And did you see the North Korean dictatorship equivalent with the troops for the Orange One's birthday? And did you see how not many people attended that? And the squeaky tank. Oh, I love that. It personified the whole thing. Even Kim Jong-un was saying, those Americans don't know how to march. Well, I'll tell you something. Those troops that were marching did not salute, did not march in time. And I know that those troops, if they were told and ordered and were totally on board and believed in the mission and all that and believed that justice was going on, they would march better than the North Koreans if they wanted to, and the leadership and all that. That was a sign. That was, if not a glaring sign, that many in the military quite rightly have great concerns, because they saw an oath to the American Constitution and all that America stood for from the War of Independence on. They did not sign up for a dictator, a monarch, a king, an oligarchy. They are there for the American people and to support the American Constitution. Anyway, I'm digressing again. Gavin Newsom. That's what the damn Democrats need to do. This is an existential crisis. Do you not get that? We are staring down the barrel of actual dictatorship, the real thing. But here's the terrible thing. When I've analysed this and looked at the aftermath of each case, people, if you thought World War II, if that is not a big enough example of what not to do, of the problems of going down this very path, if you cannot see that, if you cannot value the blood that was spilt on the landing fields in Normandy with the Allied troops, so troops from many countries as well as American that all bled, people go watch Saving Private Ryan. It's a depiction. Spielberg's masterpiece. Spielberg, I think, is an absolute genius for what he did for that. And Schindler's List is the other one. Watch those. For those that haven't, so many people, who cares about the generations? The point is that there's justice at everybody, no matter what age, no matter what gender, no matter what race, no matter what economic background. In most of us, there is a sense of what is right and wrong fundamentally. And I dare anybody to say, and watch this, there are some people that do believe this, who thinks that World War II was a good thing? Who thinks that major cities being turned into ashes and rubble was a good thing? Who thinks that the millions and millions of casualties, the brutality, the misery, the damage to people, or just the sheer destruction on such a monumental scale for the time, who thinks that was a good idea? Is that not a big enough cautionary tale? Is that not a big enough cautionary tale? I mean, what else do you have to do? Go and watch Saving Private Ryan if you've never watched it. For those that have watched it, you know what I'm talking about. Blood was spilt against fascism. Young guys, some of them 18, some of them even less because they snuck through, 18 and up. People with their whole lives in front of them sacrificed their lives. And to steal that phrase, sacrifice their lives on the altar of freedom, because that's what it was. There was a darkness in Europe, a terrible darkness, a terrible evil. How anybody can think that that is a good idea or want to repeat the very things that we know through the 1930s. How anybody can support the very notion of that. So you MAGA people that believe all this stuff, you're going to believe it. I get that. Fine. For the rest of you that supported Donald Trump and thought, hey, the price of eggs is too high, and, the economy might be better, and, he's promising all these great things. Great. And perhaps you didn't dig deeper and you didn't look at all the things that many people have been screaming that this very thing could happen. I was in the camp of, I don't know that we were a minority, but there was a lot of us out there that could see even back in 2016 what might happen. We were worried about it in Trump 1.0. But it was chilling when the orange one said, I'm not a dictator, but I could be if I had to be because of, his health isn't good. And that's the other thing that people are not seeing and not realizing. And I'm going to go into this in detail. those that are behind this, and if there is a change of the presidency, look at who is next in line and look at who they're connected to and what their belief system is. Do not think for 1 minute that if there is a change of the presidency that this threat goes away, because it doesn't. On some levels, it might be worse. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. But it is a real threat. And if you're into risk management, it is a massive risk. This country is not going to be secure for a long time. And even if democracy somehow manages to survive this, I mean, the whole foundations from before have been wiped out. I don't know how you rebuild from here, honestly. That isn't going to entail a lot of pain on some levels. I don't know how you build the bridges to those that are that locked into a certain kind of thinking that they would, that they hate their brothers and sisters in the country, that they view the rest of the country, and I suppose me by virtue of the fact that I'm critical of what's going on, as being an enemy and will hate us. I mean, I'm prepared to be hated by those sorts of people that believe that stuff and they're locked into that. I do actually, ironically, I think most of us actually wish them well and wish that they could have good lives and that everybody could. I mean, that's our position, which is, gee, build a bridge, find a way. That's how it's always been done in the past. Find the commonality. I mean, everybody's struggling, bar a little 1% that we all know that isn't struggling, but the rest of us are. And people that are getting into their senior years, I feel for them because the uncertainty must really threaten them. And I know that people in other countries all around the world are watching and are terrified at what they're seeing, because people in the US might not realize it, but there is a chill globally. Because if things go the worst direction, it's not hard to draw the conclusions from what history showed us. Just look at World War II and what happened. Just look at it. Be honest. Throw away all of your preconceived notions. Try and use your mind. Read the histories. Look at Saving Private Ryan, which is, by all accounts, the people that were there had a lot of, rang true. And that was then. And think about what we have now with AI. That's another thing. The surveillance that we have now. Just go and read George Orwell's 1984. Okay, it might be a hard read for some, but do it. Try and dispassionately remove all your biases and whatever. Clear your mind and just look at face value at what's being said and try and understand it. Now, I'm fine if you've gone through that and you disagree with it and you have logic or you have arguments or you have your own feelings and whatever. Hey, whatever your beliefs are deep down, whatever's in your head, that's, as far as I'm concerned, everybody should respect everybody else's ideas in their mind. Where I have a problem is if you are going to perform an action that damages or hurts other people. That's the problem. So I see this thing as, and I'm rambling in different areas and going down different tangents of this. But what I want to do is to say, I have a cohesive model of this. I just don't want to give that away. I'm kind of tippy-toeing around it because I want to have it all laid out, and I will go through chapter and verse in great detail and show people the whole mechanics of what's happening. Now, if you choose to believe or not believe, I'm not going to be 100% right. Nobody is. But I think I'm going to be pretty right on a lot of things. Or if not, hey, great. If some people have alternative views and they want to debate it and argue it or put up other ideas, I would love to see that. And hey, if I'm clearly wrong factually, fine. I'm out. And by the way, this is opinion, hopefully satire. But with all of that happening, I want to go back to Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom is a hero now. I mean, no matter what happens, I think he's genuine. I mean, like him or not, and if you might have heard all of the stuff that the right say and blah, blah, blah. Is he a perfect governor? No, every governor's got flaws, and some people are going to like some policies and not others. But he's chosen to stand up in the face of, it's like in Tiananmen Square in China. You remember go back, those that haven't seen it, look at the single guy with his shopping bags stands in front of a tank column. It's the most breathtaking bravery I've ever seen. What Gavin Newsom is doing is brave like that because his life is on the line now. He is standing up, putting his life on the damn line for all of us, for the rest of the world, for California, for LA, for San Diego, for Sacramento, for San Francisco, for all of the different places, like for California. Okay, I know there's some people that are the right wing in California, and that's fine. You believe what you believe. I respect that. But respectfully, I will argue against what I see as being immoral, unjust, corrupt, incompetent, and an existential threat. What does that mean? It's like our very existence is under threat. The very future of everything, of life itself, is really under threat now when you really look at it, because once democracy's gone and you have a leader that can impose and do whatever they like with impunity, people, is China a bad place? No. But is it a place you want to live? I mean, you imagine that you have one person ruling the place. It doesn't matter whether they leaned left or right, or whether they use a Marxist or a Mein Kampf or whatever it is to justify whatever they're doing, or the techno-feudal, or the Dark Enlightenment and things like that, the Curtis Yarvins, Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance's, connections to that, the Silicon Set. I don't want to delve into that too much, or the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025 and the purging of government departments systematically. But if you think that living in China is a good thing, and you think that not having courts and a constitution that, even though it's flawed and imperfect, guaranteed you some degree, and I fully respect that there are systematic problems for a lot of people, certainly minorities. And personally, I feel deeply for people that are discriminated against. Why is it such a bad thing to say, just give everybody a fair go? Everybody gets a reasonable education. Why is that so radical? I mean, most of Europe and Australia and Canada and most of the world, education is kind of fundamental, and healthcare is kind of fundamental. It's not a big bad thing. It's kind of standard for most people, because decent working hours, safety, in the place you work, some degree of entitlements if you're fired for no good reason, or you've got some rights or some input. America's supposed to be the greatest country in the world, and it is the most powerful country, which is why this is so scary, that all the resources that are, concentrated, that if they were used, like using the Department of Justice to pick on, okay, I've seen a lot of people saying they hate John Bolton. They really don't agree with him. They don't like his politics. They don't like his track record politically. I can see that. But the point is, a guy that wrote the book, The Room Where It Happened, 5 years ago, and the orange one in Mar-a-Lago had a whole lot of, and documented and shown, classified documents for anybody to come and grab, some of them apparently really serious ones, That's all right, but John Bolton wrote a book and they're what? Attacking his offices and his home. Now, like or hate the guy, every single person, no matter who they are, there should be due process. They shouldn't be targeted for political reasons. They shouldn't be persecuted. Certainly not for a personal vendetta. Is this not, why is this so hard to grasp for some people? I don't get it. The rule of law should be impartial, should be fair. Everybody should be treated equally. Trumping up things and twisting things and then ginning up the bases, I've heard some people describe it, or, why is that a good idea? I do not get it. I mean, in logical terms. In terms of if you want a dictatorship, it makes perfect sense because it's a weapon of intimidation. Do you see what I'm saying? It's a difference. One is morally and just looking at the world as what it could be for everybody, which is we all breathe the same air. Somebody said that before, and I'm going to steal it. We all breathe the same air. We all drink the same kind of water. We all have the same kind of fundamental needs. We all need to sleep. We all need a roof over our heads, and we need food in our stomachs. It's pretty simple. And if you look at it, there's enough there for everybody to be looked after. And so that begs the question, as far as I'm concerned, why isn't that the case? And then if you're going to say, well, that's Marxist or Leninist or super left, no, it's not. And if you say it's socialist, as if that's a bad thing, that's a big boogeyman when, well, it depends what you're arguing for, because there's 50 different flavors if you really look at it and go look at Europe. Are there problems with the hard left and the crazy left and whatever? Yeah. Any extreme group you're going to have a problem with. But that's not what we're talking about. That's the shiny object to distract you. The point is there are fundamental things. It doesn't matter what political party, whether you're an independent, whether you're just not aligned, whether you're an anarchist or a communist or a fascist or a white supremacist person or whatever you are, there's fundamental things that there's common things, right? Which is, hey, if everybody had a decent education, decent roof over their heads, good quality medicine, paid a decent wage or decent recompense for what they're doing, didn't have to work 3 jobs just to put and even then they're going bankrupt or whatever. I mean, that's not normal. Do people not get that in lots of places in Europe, people have good lives and even they retire quite nicely and they can be, working class people that are doing ordinary things and they're looked after. Why is that a bad thing? Why is it a bad thing? I mean, it's like the One Big Beautiful Bill. 350 billion to ICE. DHS and ICE. 4.5 trillion to people who already have mansions and planes and luxury cars and yachts. And why do they need more? And other people, you had kids in schools that needed food, lunches, so that they, to avoid malnutrition. I mean, the emperor has no clothes, right? I mean, who thinks that's a good idea? Well, some people did. That's why it passed. Some of the MAGA people think this is a good idea. And this is why I have a problem with them. Because if you fundamentally think that that's fair and just and reasonable, it's not. And it's something, I don't want to be morally imperialistic about this. Like, this is my humble view. But I think most of the country, most of the world would kind of agree that in the most advanced and powerful country in the world, how you can have millions of families barely able to put a roof over their head and feed themselves, and they're working multiple jobs. They don't get decent health care. They're trying their best, and I'm going to use one of the MAGA terms. It's been rigged against them, because that's what it is. How is it possible that that can be allowed to happen? How can anybody countenance that? The whole thinking of this country has been turned on its head. Instead of unity, you have division. Instead of justice, you have injustice. Instead of prosperity, people, are you not seeing this? Do they not realize that the tariffs have meant that, like even farmers they've had markets shut because the way the tariffs work is pretty simple. The importers and the exporters pay the tariffs. Then that's a cost that's then passed on to you and me and everybody else, ordinary people buying whatever it is that's been tariffed. It's inflationary. Do people not see that the inflation went up? By the way, did you not see that the Fed, how they shook that up because they weren't doing the right thing, because the orange one wanted it changed and skewed? Do people not realize? Let me characterize this, because I did this for a while and then suddenly a few other people started to use it. I don't know if the AI filtered through my model, but they didn't get what I was talking about, which is, imagine that the US is the Titanic, and that's the economy and part of the society and things like that. And that is the Marshall Plan and the unity, the American hegemony that was around since the Marshall Plan, which is when World War II happened and the rebuilding and reconstruction happened. And instead of doing what happened after World War I, which is Germany was hit with all these reparations, they actually said, no, we're going to rebuild everything. And we're going to make sure that things don't collapse into the dark ages and something terrible comes out of it. There was a compassionate thread to this, and America was instrumental and integral to this. And there was solid alliances that, even though there were fractures and disagreements, the fundamental thing was there was a prosperity up until the 70s and even a little bit beyond. And certainly there's still an undercurrent for a long time that meant that there was prosperity in the United States. I mean, you look at how people lived back in the 1920s, 1930s, and you look at, the sheer wealth and productivity. It's staggering when you look at it on a chart. It's been like an exponential curve. But here's the problem. Realigning the alliances to align with Russia against Europe, inviting the Chinese to come in and make overtures and connect with everybody else, not America, browbeating the Canadians, who have been nothing but the best allies you could ask for and good people to boot, and threatening them, saying you're going to be the 51st state. Oh, that was funny. Yeah, not to the Canadians. If you've never lived in a smaller country and understand the mindset and being wary of a much bigger neighbor that has the power, the potential, even if they're an ally, always in the back of your mind, you're going to be wondering, are they going to one day do something outrageous? And when those threats, and same thing to Mexico. How can anybody think that's a good idea? And damaging jumping up tariffs. Go look at protectionist policies and go look at free trade. Go look at all of the, decades of studies on economics. Look at, what was it, the Smoot-Hawley fiasco. Look what happened in the 1930s. Go look at that. Go have a look at what happened in the Depression. I remember watching this Jimmy Stewart film. Go watch that. I can't remember the name of it, but it depicted a whole lot of people from rural areas in these broken down trucks with all their belongings crammed into them, coming to the cities, desperate for work. And it was a nightmare. I mean, the poverty, the desperation. Do people not get that the Titanic has hit the iceberg? And yeah, the stock market keeps going up. You know why? Because AI and the tech sector are carrying the thing. But you look at the different sectors. And if you think that because the US had the central currency that everybody trades and still trades currently, which was the reason why the US was protected, like if people think that in COVID, America did badly, it did not. I mean, it was not pleasant and not fun, and was there problems, and did it slow markets? And yes, of course. And did they have to spend a lot to prop it up? Yes. But you go and look at Europe, Asia, everywhere else. They struggled a lot harder, and their economy struggled. The US economy on paper boomed. What didn't happen was it didn't translate to the middle class and the working class people getting their fair share. Inflation flew up quite. You go have a look at the Spanish flu that happened 1918. What happened just after World War One, or at the tail end of it, and there were more people that died of that swine flu. It was called sometimes. But you look at that same kind of flu, kind of virus, similar to the coronavirus, wiped out more people than the World War One casualties. In that situation, you just look at the inflation that happened in Germany post World War One. That's what undermined the Weimar Republic, by the way. And people had so many marks they had to pay just for a loaf of bread. People had wheelbarrows to take it. That's inflation. Well, the inflation numbers now, the orange one promised that the inflation was going to go down. It's gone up. And the last figures that came through, the economist projections, it was well above. It's skyrocketing. Are people not, I don't have to tell anybody that the prices are going up. Yeah, okay, eggs came back a bit. That's because the markets finally readjusted. And that was partly because there was some kind of bird flu thing that went round, and that's why they had to cull so many, and that's why there was a shortage. So the prices doubled or whatever they got to. But you look at everything else. If people are going to tell me that the price of everything hasn't continued to fly forwards since January the 20th, most people struggling. If you really read between the lines and you look at what most economists are foreshadowing, they think there's going to be a recession. And if you really read between the lines, some are factoring in now a kind of depression. And part of that's fueled by the tariffs. And part of that's fueled because the world order, diplomatically and economically, the tectonic shifts have happened. America is no longer in favor in a lot of places. It's kind of like America alone now. I think people realize that it's not the Americans, but the government and the policies are what hurt people. Like, don't think that these tariffs aren't hurting people all over the world, because they are, and it's wiped out whole economies for some countries that relied on, trade with America for specific goods. It's damaged them. If you really want to go dig. I mean, there's so many different articles out there. There's a common thread to them all, and that is, if you really get the feel for it. And I'm persuaded by this. My opinion, looking at the markets, it looks to me like that Titanic thing where the markets have gone into free fall, and some of these markets will never get, there are businesses here in the United States that have flopped and failed because of this. There are jobs that were lost. Those job losses that were on those numbers didn't come magically out of nowhere. They came because those policies have really damaged foreign trade. And the whole thing is intricate and all feeds, it's like a big complex machine, and you just took a sledgehammer to it. Do people not realize it takes a long time for the effects to seep through? But they will. And here's the killer thing. If the US currency ceases to be the central currency, do people not realize what happens when all those loans get called in? And when all of the favorable terms that were there, because everybody has to prop the main currency up. And it's ironic that we're seeing meme coins and things like that now being championed by those that opposed it and have now more than embraced them and are profiting off them. That there are alternative ways of trading in currency and stuff like that. So the Forex markets, where you had the two pairs with every country. So if it's Japan with America, you've got the Japanese yen and US dollar, the US dollar with the German mark and with the Australian dollar and with the pound sterling, whatever it is. You've got your different pairs. People don't think that if the supremacy of the US dollar, if that doesn't go, if that goes, and sorry, I'm getting a bit tired now. I've been talking on this for a while. Fundamentally, what am I saying? I'm saying there could be a depression, and it could be worse than the 1930s. If you really model it, I would love to see some economists model this stuff honestly and really crunch the numbers and play out the scenarios. But it's a real possibility. And here's the scary part. Even if it's a bad recession, which I can't see how it won't be, because the market, it's such a lot of damage that has gone ahead. The one big beautiful bill ripped apart the healthcare, 1.2 trillion. They took away the food stamps from millions. I think the estimates I saw ranged in the 4 million, and that might be a conservative estimate, because until it all pans out over however long it takes, for these things are like long lead times, so the net effect will then suddenly hit, and who knows whether it's a couple of months or a year or whatever the time frame is. But all these bad things, if they all line up at the same time, you're going to see a catastrophe happening. You'll see job losses you've never seen before. You'll see companies go broke right, left, and center. You'll see strains on the whole financial system. You'll see banks coming under threat. You'll see insurance companies under threat. You name it, everything. If it's the worst case scenario, it could be catastrophic. And if that currency supremacy that the United States has as the major world currency, if that ceases or is eroded heavily, which is what's happening, it's gradual, but as all these big strategic shifts are made, as Europe aligns more with China and they trade more in markets that were formerly strongly, in some cases, US, or at least lots of revenue. And by the way, the ICE people are destroying tourism. That's another thing. Look at Vegas. My God. I mean, here in California, businesses are suffering because the tourism's gone down in times when they, billions of dollars, this all adds up. Each of these negative things, more cost on these things, things being cut in different areas, these have huge effects. And I wonder what's going to happen. I mean, we're talking about trying to keep crime in line. What happens when you have millions of people that can't feed themselves no matter what they do? They don't have access to any kind of social security or security net. And those soup kitchens can only stretch so far, or whatever the charities are. And if you're expecting the charities to be able, if there's a deep recession or a wholesale depression, you think law and order is going to be in line there? It's going to be very nasty and bloody. And if you think crime isn't going to fly through the roof, and that is all based on these policies, it's all avoidable. If people can't see that that's what's coming potentially, and the warning signs are there and blinking, and it's like the Titanic, the holes are in the ship, those diplomatic relationships, those trade relationships, they're gone. Like decades worth from the Marshall Plan period on. They're gone. Do people not get that? This is not okay, and it's not going to go away. Doesn't matter what Fox spins it as, and they'll spin it and blame other things and say the Democrats did it. I don't think the Democrats could do much at all, to be frank, the way they've been, except for a few notable people. There are some. Not like, I don't want to name names, but there are some people that did a Trump and tacoed at points when they shouldn't have, when they should have stood their ground. There are certain times that you don't allow terrible policies to go through. You don't enable those. These are turbulent and dark times. And frankly, there is water to be had to Is there hope? Is there solutions? Yes, definitely. And I have noted some really good ideas that are out there. And I haven't touched on, well, if you look at my channel, you'll see that one of the things it's like a toolkit. I'll give part of the game away. I see it as like a game of poker, Monopoly, and chess. And you think about a game that's all of those things. I'm trying to use a metaphor. I'm trying to use an analogy. I'm trying to give people some sort of a concept to hang this on. One of the key Achilles heels of the United States is the Constitution, because it was designed and written and had been functioning for centuries successfully. In the face of England tried to come back and, 1812, just think about that, and still survived miraculously, was not a small feat. America could well never have been, and there were several crisis points that it had. Okay. But the Constitution was based on the idea that you didn't have bad actors. You had people of good faith or good intent that were going to occupy key roles, even if people disagreed or they had policy differences. Fundamentally, the idea was that you would have unity and that people in the office would treat the office with respect and would have the country and the people's interests at heart, right? They never accounted for an alliance quite like there is. And again, in my upcoming video, I'm going to show comparisons as to the fragility. There are definitely very different factions within the overarching right-wing, MAGA, fascist kind of mess. It's not one entity. It's many different unique pieces that fit together in some ways, but don't think for 1 minute that there aren't people that are bitter rivals, because there are. And don't forget, if the prize is that democracy falls, there will... Just look at Night of the Long Knives. Look that up. Look at what happened to Ernst Röhm of the SA. Just look at what happened there. I project and think that if we do go down that path, there will be a bitter culling. Just look at what happened in the early days of the Soviet Union. Look up Bukharin, Rykov, and Tomsky and what happened to them under Stalin, the new economic policy period. Go and look at this history, and there are blazing examples of what to do, what not to do, and there are enormous, for the time, cautionary tales. World War II is just one of them. Look at what happened in the Soviet Union. Oh, chilling. Look at what happened to Bukharin. Look at what happened to his wife. I dare you, like you MAGA people that can actually read and think, some of these things I'm saying, just dispassionately, you look at these things and try and look at it from the human perspective. And I don't care who or what color it is that they pretend to be under. The actions are what speak louder than words. Look at what is happening. And if you're on board with what is happening and you're in support of it, that's your choice. But I'm trying to pull together these strings of history without giving too much away, because the centerpiece, if I don't approach it in the right way, people are just going to shut off and they're not going to see it. Well, I want to do it in a way where I establish the framework that's clear for everybody to see and understand. And hey, I'm willing to, I'm guessing about a lot of this stuff, but I can put a framework up, and I'm leveraging other people that did a lot of work, probably people much smarter than me, but it's like, what do they say? Still like an artist. I'm trying to borrow from the best to build a model. But part of my key message here, I started with what I think is a questionable outcome, which is somebody who or an organization that, with forensic accounting, clearly swung from 815 odd million, I think, if don't quote me, I'm going off memory here, to 2.2 billion from 2014 to 2021. How you can invoke the Eighth Amendment for that, which is usually for people that can't get bonds or bail or whatever to be released from prison because they've priced it too high and they just can't do it, or cruel and unusual punishment, or you know, what is it? It's fines that are, the severe, the penalties are too severe, the fines too much. And if they really thought that, maybe they could have said, all right, well, surely they should have done some numbers. And for one of the 5 appellate court judges, and again, I don't know, they might have had a perfectly good reason. I don't know what their reasoning was. So I'm kind of not able to comment with any authority there because I don't know, maybe they had a really good reason. Maybe there was something there that isn't reported, or you've got to go and read their dissenting viewpoint, but said that they should have dismissed it. Well, okay. And so anyway, the next part of that story. So Letitia James is going to appeal that up to the highest court in New York, which is called the New York Court. What's it called? There's a particular name for it. New York Court of Appeals. So I was thinking that it would be called the New York Supreme Court, but no, that's the court that I think it started with. I was trying to get my head around it. I don't know. There's probably some really bright people that know the New York legal system. I dabbled around and poked around and read a few things. It's not like I studied it for 5 years or something. So there are people that are far more qualified and know what they're talking about than I am on that. But Letitia James, she basically said, what did she say? I had a quote. I had all this stuff prepared. And here am I going on taking you guys for a trip around the world. Hope it was fun. I've lost it. Anyway, I'll paraphrase, so I can't actually give you the exact quote, but she was basically saying the key point is that the appellate court in New York still ruled that Donald Trump, or, the organization, chapter and verse, and that's my term, had committed the fraud. Nobody denied that. The judges didn't change that verdict or the outcome on that, which was that, yes, it had been established in a civil court that, yes, it had happened. Oh, I was supposed to be reading what it was. Did I ever get around to that? Because it was really a good read. And number 2, was that it? Looking for that number. Because this was really interesting. I know, I've got one of those magpie minds. And all this stuff somehow rattles around my head. It's fun. It's fun being me when you go to sleep and dream stuff. So, where is it? No, I really want this though because I wanted to get it right because it was quite intricate detail. No, it must be up further. No, that's not it. No, it must be back here. Because I looked at, I could only find so much about what had actually happened. I don't know whether it's because some of the documents are, you need, maybe they're not for public consumption. I know that there was a $65 million figure. I just need to find it. Sorry, here I am trying to, 62, there it is. So what happened? Forensic accounting revealed that Trump inflated property values to secure favourable loans and insurance premiums. For instance, the value of a golf course in Jupiter. God. Let me say that again. The value of a golf course in Jupiter, Florida, was reported as $62 million, despite being purchased for $5 million, making it a 1,100% increase. Now, I don't know that that's 100% right. I couldn't verify that beyond a certain level. It looks like it's correct from a couple of cross checks, but I wasn't actually able to. If I can't see the court document or a copy of it and verify that it is the correct court document, because trying to authenticate things these days, well, it depends what it is. It's takes a bit of effort sometimes. I try, and like I said, to the best of my ability, I try and report or form opinions or make projections on the best information I can find. Is all of this perfect? No. And if you're dealing with AIs, we all know they hallucinate. I'm very aware of that. Oh my God, some of the hallucinations I've got in my time. Fabricated, hallucinated quotes and things attributed to people that were never uttered, or that I could find. Anyway. But that's my understanding. So as a key, this is just one strand of many, because we're talking a 7-year period. We're talking $815 million to $2.2 billion. So the forensic accounting revealed that Trump inflated property values to secure favorable loan and insurance premiums. For instance, the value of a golf course in Jupiter, Florida, was reported as $62 million, despite being purchased for $5 million. And so that's a 1,100% increase. Now, if that's accurate, and this is just one strand, this is just to illustrate what was going on. Think about the way a court works and how evidence is presented, and there are rules for that. And think about, if you're talking forensic kind of accounting, assuming that that's what it is, and that's the information I had seemed to indicate that this was highly detailed reconstruction of financial movements amongst the different banks and the insurance companies and the whichever Trump organizations that were involved. I don't know. I haven't got access to that. I would love to see all that. I would love a really good actuary or an accountant that really that really knows their stuff to dig into that and show us what really happened. Because, look, this is my point about justice. Trump was saying, yay, it was a triumph for him. But I don't know. If it was just and fair and the court ruled fairly based on whatever the factors were, which I'd really like to see what their rationale was for reducing $527 million as a penalty. It's like anybody else. If you get fined for something, if you commit fraud, you usually go to prison, right? If you falsify things, if you signed a document with a notary and things like that saying, yes, I guarantee that this is right, and I swear that it's correct. It's like perjury in a court. If you lie in a court, if you lie to an FBI officer and things like that, these are not trivial things, But just think about it. If you, whoever you are, defrauded somebody by whatever means and misrepresented something and said, oh, yes, I've got $5 million in my bank and you got $5 or something. Yeah, I'm exaggerating, but, we're talking 1,100%. Say you inflated everything. So, yeah, so, you're saying you got 50,000 when you got 5,000, right? And there's a requirement for that because you're basically saying, hey, I'm putting up collateral to buy something. And if I default on it, then you can collect on whatever those assets are. If you sign with a notary and all that sort of stuff, it's a legal signature, and it's like swearing an oath in a court. it's like committing perjury. They're not the same thing, but I'm trying to give you an analogy for those people that are legalists, know the law and whatever. Okay, I get it. You know this stuff probably better than me. If you've studied law and you've been practicing, I mean, obviously, I respect that, because you've put the time in, you've got the intelligence, and okay. But for those that I'm trying to get the message over. Fraud is fraud. I mean, it's laid out in the statutes. It's very well defined. And if the evidence within those areas of the law is then demonstrated that, you inflated the prices, particularly if you went from $5 million for the Jupiter golf course in Florida and it went to $62 million, and that's what you claimed, and that's supposed to be collateral, that's fraud. Now, if anybody else did that, all right, and I'm just saying, if anybody, it's just saying, why shouldn't the law apply equally? Now, after my big tangential talk, you can see how this fits in, but I'm trying to dig at the bigger picture and show the small ways, even in small ways. See, the difference between dictatorship and democracy is at the margins, because whoever you are, if you're hearing me, and some of you probably know far more than me about a lot of things, I saw this coming from, I was saying to people, watch out. I mean, Bill Maher was saying slow-moving coup right from the early days. He saw it. I'm sure there were millions of us probably that saw it and knew it and watched and held our breaths and thought, that one's over. But when this election, last one in 24 happened, it's like, I could see the numbers and they weren't looking good. And when the result came in, and purely the way I'm looking at it is, do the least harm is more where I'm coming from, which is the lesser of two evils, because that's what it is. The devil and the deep blue sea, which is the worst, The devil the devil you don't. I don't know. So in that case, Letitia James is going to continue, apparently, even though she is being attacked. And here's the thing, is I'm trying to draw all these straws together, and I haven't yet been able to put all of that together. I've got the big stuff. It's tying all the smaller stuff together. I would love people to help me do that. Lawfare is one of the big ones. Executive orders. You can see in one of the political catch-ups I did, I outline just one of the many strategies that could be used. And I take my hats off to the ACLU and it's like Democracy Docket, and I mean, there's a whole line of them. I shouldn't say this. Hey, by the way, sorry, in my last one, I kind of made it out that the ACLU was the only one doing it. I've actually got a video that goes more into depth about other outfits. In fact, there's one I'm working on where I want to cover all of the great organizations, and I do appreciate there are so, like, even the attorney generals that are trying to stop the overreach. That's a whole war. That's lawfare. That is one of the Achilles heels of the Constitution. That's what I was going to argue about, coming back to it. I was going to say the real problem with the Constitution is it has a major flaw, and the major flaw is that the Supreme Court has the absolute authority to interpret everything. So, I don't know, it's controversial, and I know there's a lot of arguments on this, and I am not an emeritus professor of a university in law. Hardly. Doesn't mean I can't see things. Doesn't mean I can't read things and understand them and comprehend them. Doesn't mean I can't see sometimes the tactics, and some people get sort of locked into the standard patterns. I'm not. I'm looking at the contrarian view, which is, what's the worst thing that these guys can do? What's the worst card they can play? Or what are the realistic ones they can play? And then what's in between? And basically do the blue team, red team kind, play scenarios out for what might happen. So the Supreme Court ruled that the President of the United States now has immunity for anything that is what was it called, an official action or something like that. There's a certain set of terms. Now, I have to step a few steps back because the way that the legal language is understood, the way it's written, the way it's interpreted, I mean, some people spend their lives on this and are some of the brightest minds around. Some aren't. So the actual wording and the way that the Supreme Court rules on the Constitution and things like that it's not accessible to most people because there's a lot of weighting and complex meanings attached to certain words, and then where they sit and how they're used and the context that they're given. I don't fully understand it. I think even some lawyers don't understand it, I'm pretty sure. It's a specialist field. Constitutional law is, and this is the problem. It's kind of become esoteric. That is, most people don't know and understand it. And I think that's part of the flaw of the US Constitution, in that they didn't really, and I was talking about this, that they hadn't really thought about bad actors. And then what I was going to follow up with was, if the Supreme Court can rule that a president is above the law and has immunity, and is kind of indemnified from official acts, that's it, official acts. So an action that is official in their role as the president, that's a really wide ambit. You can do a lot of things with that. If they can rule that, let's just take 3 steps back and think about the context of what is the Constitution, where did it come from, and what's behind it. American Revolutionary War is fought, the War of Independence, 1776. People see these pictures and they hear the history, but a lot of people don't realize these were desperate times, and these were humans in a flowing part of history, just like we're in now. So you people out there that are feeling like, oh, it's all too big, if you can stand up and do just a little bit, every person counts, everybody. The more, the better. But here's the thing. A monarch, an absolute ruler, the King of England, was making decrees or rules or laws that affected the people of the American colonies, which adversely affect them. And it's not like they didn't go and say several times and send delegations and send letters pleading. And it's not like they didn't try. I mean, they really tried a lot to say, this is unjust, this is unfair, can you please look after us? And they did have a mentality of they were British subjects. They were, the English king was their sovereign and monarch at the time. That was where they came from. Like even John Adams. I mean, he even argued some cases as a lawyer. His loyalty at first was questioned until, to some extent. But I mean, obviously that changed much later. He ended up being, the second president and things like that. And anyway, I love digressing. History's a fun thing. But here's the point. They established a separation of powers. They established in black and white and debated heavily the idea of checks and balances, the idea of a separation of the powers and having separate but equal cornerstones, which was the judiciary, the presidency, and the Congress. So you had a legislature. So you had the laws there, the interpretation of the laws, and then you had the executive. And what they really didn't want was a repeat of having a king rule over everybody. They were adamantly against that. It screams through the texts if you really read it and look at it. Are there different interpretations? Can you look at different aspects and try and, history's only as good as the people that interpret it and what's left and making some sense of it. So what you're given is just a particular flavor of a tiny representation of probably what really went on. Because just like your life is complex, imagine trying to encapsulate that in just a little piece of history with the big events. You lose all the detail, except for what's recorded. And if you have good, gifted historians that are actually good at really trying to get to some semblance of what was there, nobody's going to be unbiased. But here's the key message. In the American War of Independence, they fought against an absolute monarch. They didn't want a CEO with absolute power. They didn't want a dictator that we know of those terms today. And in the Constitution, if you read through, there's no mention of the president having some special power, some sort of reserve power or some sort of magical power so that they were above the law, like Nixon was seen to be a criminal president. He had broken the law, and the cover-ups and whatever was the real problem. But Watergate was, got the ball rolling, but it was also the cover-ups and all sorts of things that flowed from that, obstruction of justice and things like that. Not trivial. I mean, that's why he resigned, because he was forced out. It was a bipartisan group of people that said, if you get impeached, the Senate will rule to support the impeachment. So what did Nixon do? He saw he saw what was coming, and he resigned. That famous thing where he throws his hands up on the helicopter. Go look at that. Go look at Nixon for the people that don't know that part of history. Oh, really go look at that. Woodward and Bernstein. Carl Bernstein is still around. Bernstein, I don't know. And Woodward are still around. Look at some of the things that they've been doing since. I don't know where Carl Bernstein's gone. I saw him on CNN in Trump 1.0. I haven't seen him around much. Fascinating guy. Same with Woodward. Woodward's, what an incredible partnership, even though they were kind of, I think they graded on each other sometimes. Who wouldn't, in sort of situations like that? But they had a fantastic partnership, and, it changed history. And why I'm raising that is the other part of the problem here is that the media are being lent on. I mean, look at what happened with Paramount and Stephen Colbert. And, frivolous lawsuits then becoming kind of like a bribe or pay to play. If you want the FCC to put the approval through for mergers and acquisitions and different things like that, or, whatever, you got to pay the piper. Say, oh yeah, settle out of court, even though it would never have, I don't think the chances of success were so remote. But it's part of the pattern, which is every facet of the United States fabric is under attack. Anyway, I better wrap up. It's been good talking to everybody. Time has flown. Time to say bye-bye. Please, would love to hear from people. Time to go. Thanks for watching.